Hello again, Dan Alasso with History for Today. And we're coming to the end of the summer. It is the 7th of August, and I am here in my office at Bemidji State University, hopefully getting all of my stuff together so that I can prepare for my 4 courses that begin on the 24th of August, and just make sure that I am up to date on all of the projects that I'm currently doing or planning. I've been facilitating a short course for faculty in retrieval practice, which is about to enter its final week. So I will do a little bit more with that this week, and then that will be over. And then I'll start to think about what I'm going to do to change it, because they have asked me to offer this short course again for faculty at the end of September. And I will be facilitating it by myself this time, rather than co-facilitating it with one of the instructional designers who helped to build the course. So I might make a couple of changes that reflect my style before I do that. And that will also give me an opportunity to put it together into the type of course that I might offer someplace else, such as Skillshare. Now, as I've mentioned before, I've been going to Minneapolis and St. Paul on a regular weekly basis this summer. I didn't go last week because I went to a resort and we had a family get-together. My 2 daughters from out of town came in with their significant others, and my in-laws drove in from where they live, about 4 hours away. And so we had a nice week. We floated the Mississippi River. We rented a jet ski on Lake Bemidji. We hung out at the beach at this resort. We went to a challenge course, and the kids climbed up 30 feet into the trees and walked on wires and went down a zip line and things like that. So it was quite an eventful few days. And now that that is over, I am going down to the cities one more time next week with my son to do my final bit of research, and he'll do his final session of the dance class that he's in down there. And we'll go to our final restaurants, and that will be a nice experience to remember from this summer as well. This traveling to the cities every week has involved 4+ hour drives each way. So it has been a little bit more time consuming and maybe a little bit more tiring than I had expected it to be. I have managed to do a bunch of research, and I've identified some places that I'll be ready to go and do more research at when they're more open. The Minnesota History Center, for example, is not as accessible as I would like it to be. And I've really enjoyed traveling with my 16-year-old son, Gio, who has been very interested in seeing the cities, in doing things there, and in eating a more varied diet than we have available to us up in the North Woods. Now, before I left last week, I sat in on a pre-launch webinar with the Research Rabbit team. And I have to say that I'm only becoming more and more impressed with this. I think that this app is going to be a game changer. People who do research in just about any field will benefit from this. But you really have to try it out to see the power. I think it's going to be open to everyone very soon. But if you still need a referral code, here's mine. Now, I'm not wearing plaid today. Instead, I'm wearing this t-shirt that I bought at Victor's 1959 Cafe in South Minneapolis. It's a place that Gio and I went a couple of times for breakfast. And I'm not sure if there really is a Victor, or if the name of the place refers to the fact that the Cubans were the victors in the 1959 revolution. I suspect that's the case because the back of the thing has this on it. And so refers to the fact that the United States government has continued to sanction the Cuban people basically ever since that 1959 revolution. And one of the things that was especially fun about this last visit to Victor's was that although Gio and I ordered off of the Cuban side of the menu for breakfast, I looked at the American side, and the first thing that I saw was that the special was called the Professor Stavru. And then the next special beneath that was the Mrs. Stavru. And so when the waitress came back by again, I said, so what's the deal? What's the connection with Professor Stavru? Because I knew him from the University of Minnesota. And she said, oh, well, his daughter owns the place. And so that was a nice surprise. And I told the waitress the little story of how in the late 1990s, when I was taking occasional evening classes at the University of Minnesota while working in the computer industry, I took 2 semesters of Russian history with Professor Theophanis Stavru. And I was really inspired. I wrote a paper on Radishev's famous book, A Journey from St. Petersburg to Moscow. And I talked with him briefly about the fact that I was really interested in history and might like to pursue it into graduate school. I think that semester I was also taking a course on the European Enlightenment. And the thing that I remember is that Professor Stavru sort of advised me against it. I was, of course, gainfully employed at the time. I had a career and I was doing pretty well in the computer industry. And he thought that I was saying I want to be a Russian historian, or I want to be a historian of the European Enlightenment. And he said, well, those specialties are really not on the upswing right now. This would have been around 1998, 1999. And so as I perceived it, he wasn't particularly encouraging about that. Fast forward about a decade, and in 2006, of course, I did go to grad school at Mankato State University and got a master's in Latin American history, so not Russian, not European. And then I went to the University of Massachusetts from 2009 to about 2012 and ultimately got a PhD in environmental history and U.S. Social and political and economic and cultural history in the 19th century. Again, not the European or Russian specialty. Then, kind of ironically, I moved to northern Minnesota while I was working on my dissertation, and 5 years later got a job at Bemidji State University. Ironically, teaching not only environmental and U.S. history, but the rest of the world, the non-Western world especially, which, strangely, included Russia. So I told the waitress a sort of condensed version of that little story, and she thought it was just a hoot. And then she said, well, you know, he's coming in this morning. And so sure enough, by the time Gio and I were finishing our breakfast, who shows up at the patio waiting area outside the little seating area but Professor Stavru. And as he was standing there waiting for the guest that he was going to have breakfast with, I went over and I shook his hand and I reintroduced myself. And he kind of vaguely remembered me, I guess. And when I told him that he had advised me against a career in history, but I had persevered anyway and gone ahead with it, he was very happy that I hadn't taken his advice. Although he did say that I may have misunderstood his advice a little bit, because as he recalled it, he was talking more about following him into a career in Russian history or European history. So we had a nice little visit for a few minutes. We took a couple of pictures, and he invited me to stay in contact with him. He said, you have my email at the University of Minnesota, right? That still works because I'm still working. And this kind of blew my mind because Professor Stavru is 87 years old. And actually, this was kind of an inspiration for me because I'm coming to this career in history and in teaching a little bit late in life. I had a whole career in the computer business, and I've only been doing this for 4 years or 5 years or 6 or 7 years, if you count the online courses that I was teaching for UMass when I was ABD. So I've often thought about that. I've often wondered, how long will I continue doing this? And now I have an inspiration and I have an example of somebody who is doing it into their late 80s. So I have a couple of decades to look forward to if I feel good and I decide I want to continue doing this. So I think that's what I'm going to continue doing. And as I said, this week I'm beginning to get all my stuff into one sock, organize my classes, organize my other activities, and I will begin making videos on a really regular basis in the next few days. So stay tuned for that. And thanks for hanging in and watching my backlist while I've been on vacation. But I'm back now. So thanks very much for watching today, and I will see you again very soon.